Hi guys, how are you getting on? Are you alright? I'm Robbie with another video installment in my video blog. And today let's talk about reading. And in particular, I wanted to touch upon a subject which is probably concerning many of you. Namely, it's how to find a good book to read, Because a few weeks ago, a couple months ago actually, I found myself in a situation when I couldn't really find anything else to read because I'd read all the books by my favorite author, David Gemmell, and he writes heroic fantasy fiction. Heroic fantasy fiction is a new term, probably coined relatively recently, and basically the whole story is centered around one character who possesses all the good features and none of the bad ones. So he's basically the hero, right? Hence the name of it, heroic fantasy fiction. And all them books on that shelf, they're actually David Gemmell's books, with a few exceptions. And I've read them through many times, some of them 5-6 times. And then I started reading something similar. In this case, this is a historical fiction, and I've read a good few of those type of books. And then I read some just historical books like New York, which is a very, very interesting book. Actually, it's spanning a number of generations over hundreds of years, describing how the first settlers came to New York, and it's very interesting, in fact, And same author, a book called Dublin. And as I was reading, I was kind of exhausting all my areas of interest because, weird as it may sound, you can't actually find hundreds of similar books, you know what I mean? Let's take, for instance, this book, New York, right? You'd think that in this particular genre, there'd be dozens of authors writing very similar books, but it's not the case. So basically, eventually, I found myself in a situation where I couldn't find anything interesting. I was going to the bookstore, to the local bookstore, and just flicking through the books and trying to find something that I might be interested in, but there was nothing. And then one day, you see, my daughter is big into reading. She reads all the time. She can actually read a book in a day. She has a little bit more time on her hands, so she can just sit down on the couch in the morning, and by the late afternoon, the book is finished. She reads like a robot. And then I picked up one of her books, which is a teenage book. It was so interesting. I just couldn't stop reading it. And ever since, I've been reading my daughter's books, which I'd never think before. Why would I start reading teenage fiction? Because I'm not a teenager, When I was so focused on the adult book section. Well, not adult in the other sense of the word, but in the normal sections where I would go, like fiction. I wouldn't even look at crime fiction because I'm not into crime at all. So fiction, historical fiction, fantasy, science fiction, and all those types of books. And I would never think in 100 years to look into the teenage book section, right? And just because my daughter happens to read a lot of that particular type of fiction, I started reading those books, and I was blown away, The book I'm reading now at the moment is Partials. And you wouldn't probably even call it a teenage book, for the fact, just for the fact that the main characters are quite young, doesn't actually necessarily put it into a teenage category. Anyone can read such and similar books, and she has loads of books, different series, and some of them remind a little bit of the, what is the movie called? The Twilight movie series, you know, about vampires and all mythical creatures, and there's loads of love stories intertwined within, and I like that, actually, you know, I find it interesting. It's not necessarily something that broadens your horizons and makes you a more intelligent person. It's just to kill time, and it's interesting, and I don't deny that. I just kill my time by reading. But at the same time, I constantly update my passive vocabulary. You see, the difference between a passive and active vocabulary is active vocabulary is the one you're comfortable is the one you're comfortable with when speaking, like I'm doing now. I'm using my active vocabulary, but the amount of words I would recognize, but not necessarily know how to use them, you know, not necessarily being able to use them, is much vaster, probably 2 or 3 times bigger. And as you read, over time you develop like sixth sense for new words, and their meaning actually reveals itself as you read. You don't need to use dictionaries or anything like that, you know. And it's a very good way of widening your overall English fluency, you know. So basically that was the point of this video, just to tell you that if you're stuck like I was a few weeks ago and you're not sure what to read next, then you probably should look beyond what you normally would. Look into books like Harry Potter, you know. I haven't read them yet, but I probably will, you know, because all the time I just keep thinking they're just children's books, you know, but not necessarily, you know. Anyone can read them, and same goes with other teenage books and probably other genres I haven't looked into personally yet, and probably I will over time when I'm done with all my daughter's books, which is probably gonna take me 100 years, considering the amount of books that she has. Okay, my friends, thanks for watching, and talk to you soon again. Bye.